Charlie Kirk's last couple of days, in which he was lambasting the Zionist lobbyists who were pressurizing him. He was anti-war against Iran. He was also turning against Israel.
Yeah.
What do you think about that? Is that the Charlie Kirk show? You wanted to have a conversation about Charlie Kirk.
Okay, sure.
What's your name?
Kenny.
Penny.
I'm Mansoor. We're all Muslims, and of course Charlie Kirk had some issues with Muslims or not?
All right. Sure, go ahead.
Yeah.
So what we do in Speaker's Corner is we have conversations with people about different topics. So first maybe you could introduce yourself and your thoughts on Charlie Kirk.
So, my name's Kenny, and I'm an agnostic. I admired Charlie Kirk because of his passion for free speech and respectable dialogue. And even though I didn't share his religious views, I still admired how he debated with people who disagreed with him with humanity and compassion and warmth. And I admired his articulate delivery.
And this shirt for you is a symbol of sympathy with him, or do you believe in his brand, or like if you don't share his theological view, you don't believe in his religious outlook, is it just a political thing for you?
Partly, I'm a Donald Trump supporter.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's interesting.
I'm a member of Reform UK.
Okay,
But mostly for me, it represents freedom of speech,
okay,
which is important.
okay, good. No, that's fair enough. And when it comes to yourself, you said you're agnostic. So a lot of the people who are part of the Trump fans and Reform and also Charlie Kirk, they're coming at it from a Christian perspective.
That's right. But many are not also, though.
Right.
Many are not.
So
It's
from-
more so in America, it's very difficult to separate republicanism from Christianity.
I understand
But
that.
small c conservatism in the UK, there's a higher percentage of atheists, although most Christians will be small c conservatives than what they will liberal.
Fine. What if I was to ask you, these conservative values, they actually come from Christianity, or they come from religion? So
Yeah,
some,
that's very true, actually.
yeah. So there's a gap, there's a causal gap between what you believe
Yeah.
and the values that you hold on to.
Yeah.
So
It's possible that, you know, I could be referred to as a cultural Christian.
cultural Christian. okay.
Without, so, you know, I acknowledge that Christianity and Judeo-Christian values are responsible for what the Western culture is. The
What?
love of free speech, the divinity of the individual. But I just don't believe in the superstitious aspect of religion.
Sure. So just
Yeah.
on that point, you said Judeo-Christian. Why did you say Judeo-Christian? Like that's just a term that we've only started using in the last couple of years. It's not historically been a Judeo-Christian civilization.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, so my understanding of the Western culture is it started in Jerusalem, back in the time of the Bible, yeah? Then the Enlightenment travelled to in Athens, yeah? The ancient Greek philosophy, the love of debate and free speech. And then there was Rome, yeah? So they're the three cradles of Western civilization: Jerusalem, Athens and Rome. That's no my word for it, that was on a Jordan Peterson documentary that I watched
Sure.
with him and Ben Shapiro,
Sure.
where they were doing a series on Western civilization.
Okay, so that's a really interesting take
Yeah.
because it's good you brought this up. That's a modern narrative. In the past, the Western civilization essentially goes back to the Romans and the Greeks, and the Romans and the Greeks and the Western civilization which spawned from them, all the way up to pretty much the Enlightenment, were keeping themselves away from, or they were persecuting rather, the Jewish people. So this idea that actually this civilization started off in Jerusalem and Athens, and you had this type of...
Well, the values and the ideas, the culture.
So as a point, Jews were persecuted.
As Jesus was a Jew himself. Yeah.
We don't believe that, but we will
Yeah.
get into that.
Right.
Jews were persecuted throughout the West, and they actually found sanctuary in the Muslim world. For example, in Rome, you couldn't actually be a practicing Jew and have the freedom of speech and have the freedom of religion and these types of things. They were kicked out of Jerusalem, and it was the Muslims who brought them back in. So the fact is that when it comes to these types of narratives that you're hearing them from people with political motives who are distorting the history, and they're trying to create a type of situation where it's pitting the Judeo-Christian world against the Muslim world, when that's actually a false dichotomy. The world is a lot more complicated than the way that they're trying to pit it.
Of course it is. I'm not denying that. But you asked me, why I'm wearing this T-shirt, and, I'm giving you my answer.
No, I get it.
I'm not saying that any one religion's perfect.
No, you're not.
And that any other one religion's totally evil. I'm not saying that.
But I would say something, Kenny, right?
Kenny.
I would say...
What's your name, sorry?
Subboor. And his name's Mansour. You may have been, because you mentioned reform and you mentioned Trump and you mentioned Jordan Peterson, Ben Shapiro, and that documentary, you may have had some information about Islam that was articulated to you that may not be correct. So I wanted to know, what are your thoughts on Islam based upon what you've heard from that camp?
Well, it's not what I've heard, it's the statistics that I've researched. Like, for example, it's something like 86% of terrorist attacks over the last 30 years have been committed by Islamist fundamentalist terrorists.
Right. What if I was to turn around and say to you, if there is a bus that's heading off to a wedding and it's bombed, would that be a terrorist attack? By civilians being killed?
Of course, I would.
Of course.
Yeah. So if it's intentional,
if it's
but in the fog of war, you do get collateral damage.
No, but
for example, in World War II, when the Allies were bombing Germany to defeat the Nazis, unfortunately 2 million innocent civilians were killed. But it's still one of the most celebrated victories in military history.
But
every year we celebrate Victory in Europe Day.
But
I'm not saying it's right, I'm not saying it's ideal, it is what it is.
But Kenny, you sound like a very intelligent man, so I want to ask you something. We need to be morally consistent. Do you agree? We need to be consistent in what we say. So an attack on a bus full of children going to a wedding would be a terrorist attack, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. The amount of bombs that America has dropped on Iraq, on Afghanistan, on Syria, on Libya, on Gaza, through Israel and all of this, if we're to add those to the terrorist list, then in the last 30 years, Muslims have been the recipients of terrorism, and the majority of the terrorism has actually come from the Western world.
Fair enough, if that's your beliefs.
Well, it's not. We want to be it's statistics.
I'm a Trump supporter, right? I've always agreed with American foreign policy. I was against the war in Iraq. Donald Trump was against the war in Iraq. He said to George Bush, if you go in there, you'll make a mess of it. If you watch Donald Trump's foreign policy speech before he got elected in 2016, he said the same message.
But then he got bought out by the Zionists.
Because of that ISIS were able to come. A lot of the ISIS commanders were Saddam Hussein's former generals.
Who started ISIS? It started because of the US invasion.
Right.
The same with all of these types of extremist groups. So, look, the point is, when it comes to Islam, there's propaganda which is being put out through these narratives, right? 30,000 attacks, majority have been Muslim. When we actually add the terrorist attacks, for example, last couple of days, there's been terrorist attacks by Israel on Lebanon, on Iran, as well in the last couple of weeks. From that perspective, Islam stops being so scary. Now, Reform UK, for example, from my understanding of what they're about, they have come to the forefront on an anti-immigration, anti-Islam narrative. That's been their main thing. Would you agree with that?
Well, my perspective is, I don't think Islam is compatible with Western democracy. I just don't.
Right.
You know?
Okay. So let me ask you.
Some of my friends are Muslims, though.
Sure. If I was
just let me say.
Sure.
So just because most Muslims are peace-loving, lovely people, that doesn't mean that you don't get problems when the immigration of Islam into European Western countries doesn't cause problems. It's like, to use an example of the Nazis in Germany, most Nazis were actually peace-loving people. But there's an old saying, the peaceful majority are irrelevant, though. It doesn't mean that ideology isn't problematic.
Sure. So if I was
So
to,
that's my personal view.
sure, that's fine. But if I was to ask you, what are the main teachings of Islam that you think are incompatible with the Western democratic view? Because if I was to say to you that the first thing that we say is that there's none worthy of worship except the one God, and we say we should have our life's purpose being love, hope, fear, and trust in God. Love thy neighbor. Many of the things that come from also teachings from a Christian culture in terms of how you treat your parents, how you treat others. All of those things are actually ignored by the media, and what is not ignored is the differences, because there are differences. And those things are amplified not because it's in the interest of the Western world, they're amplified because it's in the interest of the Zionist entities that have taken over the West, like parasites.
What's a Zionist?
A Zionist are basically the Israelis who believe that the Middle East is theirs. From the river Tigris to the river Nile, they believe this entire territory is there, and they believe that they have the right to genocide the people in those territories, and they have been doing that for decades.
It's not just the Israeli belief, anyone who believes in that.
Yes.
Okay, so I have a problem with the term genocide. The reason being is because the population of Gaza back in the 1960s was like 200 and something thousand or 500,000, right? It's now like, what's it, 2.5 to close to 3 million. So if an area's been genocided, the population doesn't keep going up and up and up.
That's not true. I'll tell you why. A genocide is an attack on a group, partially or wholly, in which you have a indiscriminate killing of the civilian population. So,
I don't believe that Israel's indiscriminately killing people.
Okay, 1 second.
You know?
All of the major human rights organizations in the world have called it a genocide. So mine and your view here is irrelevant. The other thing to keep in mind is the only reason why I believe you are supporting Israel in terms of their narrative is because you've been brainwashed due to things like the Jordan Peterson documentary and the Ben Shapiro stuff that you're talking about, and Trump.
It's also because I've done my research.
Okay, so let me ask you.
I've read about it.
Sure. Let me ask you this question. If right now London here, you don't want London to be overtaken by Muslim immigrants, do you?
No.
I'm sure you don't.
No.
What if we take over London, the Muslims, and then we take the indigenous white people like yourself, and we basically put restrictions on yourself, like you cannot collect rainwater.
Okay.
The rainwater doesn't belong to you. And what we do is that we set up checks in all your districts and not allow medicine in, not allow baby formula in. Get people to basically start begging on the street. And once you start revolting, one of you fires a shot at us, we start leveling the areas which are, say, the areas where the indigenous people live. This is the history since 1948, which was the Nakba. The Nakba was the great expulsion of the Palestinian people, right? So from then until now, there's been an ethnic cleansing.
A lot of the Arab leaders of the countries that were going to invade Israel, they declared that they were going to invade Israel in 1948, once Israel declared itself as an independent state. They asked all the Arabs and the Muslims to leave Israel because we're going to bomb Israel and we're going to massacre like all the Jews and try and annihilate Israel from. Yeah, that's why there was a lot of people who left.
Okay,
I'm not saying for 1 minute that Israel does everything right.
Okay, so
or it's like this saintly fucking state.
Sure.
There's no states like that.
Sure.
Every state has corruption.
Sure, but
and malpractice.
Yeah, but Kenny, we need to go back slightly a bit further. You have a bit of an Irish accent. Scottish, right? So you're forgetting a key factor, because the Scottish have also been brutalized by the British, right? It was the British who set up this colonial state. And do you know the basis of this state was the same basis that they had in Northern Ireland. They wanted a state that they could actually call their own, a state that was a, if you like, vassal state. And the declaration, the Balfour Declaration, that was essentially going to condone a type of genocide in that region. So you're going into the war, what the Arabs did, but let's go into the very genesis of it. Now, Jews were living and practicing and able to function in Palestine before the creation of Israel. So it's got nothing to do with Jews, right?
But they still got massacred by the Arabs still.
So
no,
they didn't.
The Hebron massacre in 1929. Let me get my date correct.
Okay, so
1 second, I'm just getting the date correct.
Okay,
I want to.
Let's just say you have 1929. You have Hebron massacre. How?
1929, the Hebron massacre.
Okay, say
somebody wrote a book about it called Ghosts of a Holy War.
Look,
the massacre in Palestine that
you
ignited the Arab-Israel war. Yeah.
Okay.
So the Jews in Palestine were being massacred by the Muslims.
This is not true.
Before Israel. That's why it's not about land. It's about religion.
No, this is not true.
Well, it is true. I've done my research.
Look. This is why
we're going to have to respectfully agree to disagree, because I can see you're not going to change my mind and I'm not going to change your mind.
No, it's not. Right.
So I'll let you have the last word, but then
sure.
You can have the last word.
The King David Hotel, it was bombed by Israeli terrorists and British people died there.
Okay.
So there was attacks on all sides.
Okay.
And a lot of these attacks were in tension because the British wanted to create an Israeli state. The Jews were living for centuries before that in Palestine while the Europeans were massacring them. The Spanish were massacring them, the British were massacring them, the Russians were massacring them. So Kenny, what I want you to do is look at the macro picture. Don't look at, for example, if a Muslim goes and attacks a synagogue, that one incident is not enough to build an entire geopolitical theory. You have to look at what is the wider narrative here. Now, as a Scottish person, you know the story of William Wallace, you know what happened, and you know about the brutalization of your own people. I'm surprised that you're not able to give the same level of empathy to the Palestinians who struggle, to be honest. It has a lot of parallels.
Any innocent death is a tragedy. Any innocent death is a tragedy. I said before, I'm not saying that war is it's right and ideal. I'm just saying it is what it is, and I made the example of 2 million innocent people being killed in Germany during World War II,
right.
But still the most celebrated military campaign because we defeated the Nazis. I'm not saying it's ideal, I'm not saying it's morally pure, it's tragic. And it's the same way Israel and Palestine. Any innocent death, in my opinion, is a tragedy.
Okay.
But Israel,
do you believe it has a right to exist?
Has a right to exist and defend itself against terrorism.
Okay, so if Israel has a right to exist, does Israel have a right to exist in Germany?
Well, no.
Why not? Why in Palestine? They're the ones who committed the genocide historically, the Holocaust. So you don't want Israel to exist. Can Israel exist in Germany?
Why can it not exist where it already is?
Because
Britain captured that area from the Ottoman Empire.
You meant
international law, when you get defeated in war, the victors get to claim that land. Let me give the example of Germany. Before World War II, Germany was actually bigger than what it is now. It's now smaller. The reason that is because Poland captured some of the land from Germany after World War II.
Yeah.
But you didn't get people marching demanding that Poland give some land back to Germany.
Sure.
It's just
was there a Holocaust?
I believe there was a Holocaust.
Okay,
yeah.
good. Now this Holocaust, who committed it?
The Nazis.
Okay. Was it the Palestinians involved?
No.
Okay. So if someone says Germany should give up land and allow Israel to be built there, you're saying they don't have the right to do that?
Well,
that's a good idea.
I mean,
that is a very good idea.
How would you get to that, though? I mean, you can't. I mean,
so you don't want Israel to exist?
It's about religion. The Jews claim that that's their holy land, going back to the time of Jesus,
right?
Bethlehem and Jerusalem. That's
okay.
Why,
so do you know?
They've been there for over 3,000 years.
Okay. Before the Israelites came there, it was the Canaanites, which is an Arab group. Okay, even in the Bible it says that. Secondly, if you're saying they have the right to take that land, biblically that land begins off in Egypt and ends all the way in Iraq, the whole of the Middle East. That is the biblical Israel.
By the way, I'm not an expert in the history of the land in Israel in that time. My research is very sketchy.
Sure.
But I am aware that archaeological studies have shown that Jewish heritage in that area goes back to 3,000 years.
No one denies that. Yeah. But that doesn't give them the right to genocide people. And there's archaeological sites before the Israelis, right?
I explained that I don't agree that genocide is something. We have a different idea of genocide. To me, genocide is when the population is being prevented from...
That's not the definition of a genocide. Now, the other thing I wanted to ask you is this. Don't worry about that. You have said you don't believe in God. You're an agnostic.
I'm an agnostic.
Agnostic. But all of the things that you're espousing are being espoused by people who are essentially radical Christian Zionists or radical Jewish Zionists, right?
I disagree. There might be some radicals, but you get radicals.
Sorry, can you just
all sides.
Slightly
The human temperament.
Can I?
The human temperament has
Yes,
a propensity
So
for
could you move
radicalism.
slightly here, please?
Yeah?
Thank you.
yeah,
Sorry.
Let
thank
me
you.
speak to the gentleman
sure,
first,
sorry.
please. Yeah, the human mind has a... We're so vulnerable. When we start listening to extreme narratives, they can sound very appealing for different reasons. So you get radicals on all sides.
Okay, so
Yeah.
I believe Charlie Kirk was another one of these radicals.
Fair enough. If you want
Okay.
to believe that, you're
So
entitled to.
you, for example, I also
I
believe
don't
it.
believe he was a radical.
Okay.
I believe he
Have
was
you his?
very passionate about his faith. I don't share his religious beliefs.
Okay, so I would you say that you agree with the statements that he made?
Well, a lot of them, not the religious ones necessarily, because I'm an agnostic.
Okay, so I would
Yeah.
say his entire paradigm was religion. So if you don't agree with his
politics as well.
yeah, but
And history. He was very knowledgeable about history.
Sure.
It's not just religion. He explained that he expresses his political views not through in a way where he's always trying to convert people through his religious beliefs, but he's using like statistics, common sense.
okay,
and all that
his
kind of thing as well.
his historical and political takes were filtered through his religious lens. You have to remember he was
Like yours are.
Of course they are.
Yeah.
But I'm open about that.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is, you're coming from a background where you want to agree with him, you want to agree with Trump, you want to agree with reform, you want to agree with essentially the Zionist narrative.
Well, I do agree
Yeah,
with them.
But without the belief in God,
I'm
which
also
is
a member of Reform UK, I explained that.
okay.
And you'll see the election results on this 7th
Okay,
of
so
May.
can you show me that again?
That's my
Okay.
Reform UK
Okay.
membership card.
This card,
Yeah.
it has what flag on there?
That's the British flag.
British flag.
Union
okay,
Jack.
Union Jack.
Yeah.
Okay. Is Reform UK an Israeli Zionist asset? The Israeli flag should be on there, I believe.
I don't know.
Okay, I'll tell you why they are.
Probably.
When they are making decisions, for example, Reform UK was an absolute mess when it came to their narrative on Iran. The narrative on Iran, which, by the way, the Americans have realized, and a lot of Trump supporters have realized, is in the Israeli interest, not in the British interest or the European interest. It's
Well, Israel's an ally of the West.
Okay.
America and Britain.
so this is where the disagreement is. It's a parasite.
And European countries. Well, if you
Well,
want
I'm surprised. I'm
we are at
surprised.
Speaker's Corner. You know, it is free speech. You are entitled to your opinions.
Well, what
That's
is-
why
what-
I don't think we should continue this debate any
That's
further,
fine.
because I'm not going to change your mind and you're not going to change my mind. So we have to respect the flow.
Can
That's
I
fine.
I'm
ask
going to
That's
call
fine.
an end to the debate.
That's fine. Can I just ask you one last question?
Yeah,
One last question, Milendo.
One last question.
Charlie Kirk's last couple of days, in which he was lambasting the Zionist lobbyists who were pressurizing him, he was anti-war against Iran. He was also turning against Israel.
Yeah.
What do you think about that before, as we part ways? Because that's one of the pressing questions I wanted to ask you.
Yeah, so I was aware of a phone call or a text message exchange between he, Candace Owens, and I think he confided in
Josh
Megyn
Hammer.
Kelly as well.
Yeah.
And yeah, the lobbyists, the interest groups of Israel and America, they might have put pressure on him in some kind of way, but I don't think they were responsible for his assassination, if that's what you're alluding to.
Would you, on the minimum, say if he was alive, and I'm not his fan, but if he was alive, he would have been a vocal critic of the Iran war?
It's possible.
Right. And would you also concede that just before the war on Iran, he was also assassinated?
Well, when did the war on Iran start? Between
The first attack
the
that
12-day war, you mean?
Yeah.
Right, okay.
And no,
When did that happen?
sorry, this war.
This war. Okay, so that we're now at day 50, I think. Sky News have called it. It's
Yeah.
almost 2 months.
Day
So
40 something.
Charlie Kirk was assassinated 7 months ago, so he was
Right.
killed well before the war started. If you're
Okay,
meaning this war,
but remember
they
that.
usually say what day it is.
Yeah, sure. But this entire narrative of pressure on Iran started months ago. They started sending the warships months ago. What I would basically say to you is, many
So
of
the reason that is because Iran were funding their terrorist proxies in the region, Hezbollah, the Houthis, Hamas.
look. The thing is, all of these things are
Israel being an ally of
Look,
Britain and America,
look,
they had to do something, you know.
If you know the history well enough, all of these groups started because of Israeli massacres, Israeli actions. The Israeli influence in the Middle East has led to the violence, and you're simply pointing out. For example, if I was to talk about the IRA without talking about the British occupation, saying as if the IRA existed in a vacuum, it doesn't, right? My main point, which I've said to you a few times, but I'm going to say to you now, and maybe you can speak to him or speak to her. You have all of the views that the Zionists have without the religious belief. And for me, I find that very strange.
Right, okay.
And it doesn't add up to me.
Well, for me, it's about humanity and the right of a democratic state to exist. Like, for example, you have Muslims who fight in the IDF who live peacefully in Israel side by side with Muslims and Christians. You know, you can't say the same for Palestine and Gaza and the West Bank.
Look, my friend here,
Yeah.
he's good at speaking to people
do you concede that there are Muslims who live in Israel peacefully side by side with Christians and Jews?
No, I don't.
Well, there are.
No, I
there are
don't.
Muslims who fight in the IDF.
No, those are not Muslims.
Okay.
Those are not
okay.
Muslims.
I'd like to end the debate there. We're
Okay,
not
that's
going
fine.
to agree.
That's
okay,
fine.
But
That's
I respect
fine.
your
No, that's
right
fine.
to have
That's
your,
no
the
problem.
views that you do.
No problem
Thank
at
you
all.
for
No
chatting.
problem.